So when Pitt lost to Duke last Tuesday, I guess it was, that was just a matter of getting completely outclassed and outplayed by a much more talented team that was just better than them in every way. And they looked like it, and they played like it, and they dominated, as they're going to do, Duke is going to do against a lot of teams. When Pitt lost to Louisville on Saturday, that was a different kind of situation. It wasn't a major talent disparity, not like it was against Duke at least. That was just a matter of Pitt getting destroyed on the boards and getting out-rebounded by a pretty incredible amount, particularly on the offensive glass, where they gave up 17 offensive rebounds. And that was the story of the game. That was the difference of the game. What happened last night when Pitt went to Florida State to face the Seminoles in Tallahassee was a different kind of loss, and a new kind of loss, and something that was different from what we saw against Duke or what we saw against Louisville or even what we saw against Mississippi State, Wisconsin, going back to the other losses Pitt has suffered. Because this was a loss where, for at least the first half, Pitt looked like they just had no idea what they were trying to do offensively, who they wanted to be, how they wanted to play, and how they wanted to attack. And there's a great irony in the fact that for all the times that we've spent over the last 7 years talking about how Jeff Capel doesn't really run an offense or doesn't run plays, and we've discounted this and disproven this with the great film breakdowns we get from Steve Gertz and other people who really know basketball. They understand what kind of plays Pitt is running. But we often lob this criticism at Jeff Capel that they don't run plays, that they just sort of roll the ball out there and let the kids, just play basketball and see what happens. And it's funny that in the first half last night, Pitt's major undoing, and you heard the color commentator mention this, about 75,000 times in the first half, was that they were trying too much to run plays. And so they would stop the ball just over the timeline to try to set up their play. Well, meanwhile, Florida State wasn't going to sit back and let Pitt run those plays. Florida State wasn't going to sit back and let Pitt operate their offense how they wanted to. They took the battle to Pitt, and they challenged Pitt, and they trapped Pitt, and they pressed Pitt, and they double-teamed Jalen Lowe. And they made life very difficult for Pitt in trying to run its offense, when all Pitt really needed to do was let its guys go out and make plays. But that's not the only reason that Pitt lost to Florida State last night. That's not the only reason that, not the only issue facing the Panthers last night and issue that'll be facing them going forward. Because not only does Pitt need to let its players make plays, but Pitt needs to get a real handle on who those players are and who they should be. And it took way too long last night to figure out who was going to help the team win and who wasn't. Because some guys who weren't going to help the team win got a whole bunch of minutes. And some guys who ultimately probably could have helped the team win didn't get enough minutes soon enough. The end result ultimately was a 12-point loss on the road, a loss that goes as a quad one loss. Little consolation that will be to you, though I suspect after Pitt has now lost 3 games in a row, and that promising 12-2 start and 3 overall and 3-0 start in the ACC, well, it's looking a little less impressive as the Panthers sit at 12-5 overall, 3-3 in the conference, and facing a very good Clemson team here on Saturday at the Peterson Event Center. Lots of things to talk about in this game. What is Jalen Lowe's role? Is he executing it to the highest level? Do they need to take another look at the personnel they have on this team and make some better decisions or some more informed decisions now after 17 games about who you want on the court, when you want them on the court, and what you want them to do when they are on the court? And can this team ever get tougher? Because if there is a common trend through these 3 losses in the ACC, and even dating back to the Mississippi State game, and to some extent the Wisconsin game, but if there is a thread that stretches through these 3 games at least, it's that they've gotten pushed around. They got pushed around by Duke, who is a supremely talented team. They got pushed around by Louisville, as evidenced by the Cardinals' dominance on the rebounding on the glass, and then they got pushed around last night. And they got pushed around last night in a different kind of way. Some of it was physical. Some of it was Florida State dominating, being more physical than Pitt and winning in that regard. And the Seminoles did hold a 6. The Seminoles were +6 in rebounding over Pitt, but it wasn't quite as crazy as the Louisville game. Florida State only had 8 offensive rebounds. That's cutting, Louisville's number in half. After Louisville had 17, Florida State only had 8. So that's an improvement on Pitt's part. But what Florida State was able to do was really get in Pitt's face and pressure Pitt and take the fight to Pitt. And the Panthers didn't have an answer. And here again, they come out of another game looking like, I don't want to say they looked like the softer team, but they certainly didn't look like the tougher team. They didn't look like the more physical team. They didn't look like the team that wanted to initiate the fight. And if there's anything this team needs to be able to do, and I think strives to be able to do, it's to take the fight to the opponent. And they just haven't had that. They don't have that. I mean, they haven't had it all season. They haven't done it all season. I don't think they've got it, and I'm not sure that they're really going to be able to do it. So what do? How do you resolve it? Well, I think there's a few solutions, and some of them we actually talked about on the Morning Pit yesterday. And a couple of the things we talked about on the Morning Pit yesterday, we kind of saw some of, or at least saw a little bit put into practice. And I think with some amount of success despite the loss. So maybe those things should be emphasized a little bit more. All right, we got a lot to talk about breaking down this game. Really disappointing loss for Pitt against a Florida State team that they've got some good players, but they're not so talented that Pitt should be losing to them by double digits on the road. And quite frankly, if Pitt is the team we thought they were, and if Pitt is the team we believe they can be, they shouldn't be losing to that team at all, on the road or at home. But lose they did, and so this morning we're going to talk about why. It's the Thursday edition of the Morning Pit here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Yeah, this is taping this Morning Pit a little bit later than we typically do. Usually we try and get these done early evening or somewhere around there. Sometimes we'll even get them done in the afternoon if we have some time to do so. This one, obviously, we're recording after the game ended last night, which it went late. Thank you, Florida State and Pitt, for continuing to have all those free throws and calling timeouts and all those different things that you did in the course of the basketball game that caused that thing to go like 2.5 hours. I just overemphasized the T there on 2, but thanks for all of that. I really wish we could have avoided it, but it's fine. Always like those 9 o'clock games that go extra late. It's a lot of fun, for sure. But so we're recording it late last night, and so in case I nod off or something, something like that. But no, I think it was the kind of game that definitely generated a lot of energy. The message boards are certainly full of energy. Social media is brimming with energy. Even if Pitt's performance at times was lackadaisical, it certainly generated a lot of energy among the fan base. Listen, don't forget what we always ask you to do. Like this video and subscribe to youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. That we will never miss any of our exclusive Pitt video content right here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. And, of course, check out the website, Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com to get all of the Pitt sports coverage you can possibly handle. And message boards to talk with other Pitt fans about what you saw last night, if you are so inclined to want to talk about what you saw last night. Let's start with Jalen Lowe. All right, Jalen Lowe comes out of this game 22 points, 5 assists, 2 rebounds. He's 9 of 10 from the free throw line, shoots 6 of 12 from the field. Man, what a game for Jalen Lowe, except Jalen Lowe had 6 turnovers in the first half, didn't make a shot in the first half, scored 2 points, and they were both from the free throw line. Now, obviously, you can do the math. His second half was much better, 6 of 10 from the floor, 7 of 8 from the free throw line. He made a 3. He had 4 assists, only 2 turnovers. But he still finished the game with 8 turnovers, which was a big part of the problem in the first half, where Pitt had 14 turnovers in the first half. They only made 6 baskets and turned the ball over 14 times. Pretty disappointing performance. And while they were shooting 6 of 22 from the floor, they only had 1 offensive rebound. So you can see why the Panthers only ended up scoring 23 points in the first half. Jalen Lowe was a part of that. He was 0 of 2 from the floor, which is the thing. Like, when you see Jalen Lowe only scored 2 points in a half, you might think, oh, man, he was just missing everything. He was taking lots of shots. He was probably 1 of 7 or 1 of 8, something like he did at Duke. No, he only took 2 shots because he turned the ball over so much. Because Pitt, from the start, didn't have a good plan for facing Florida State. Well, I shouldn't say they didn't have a good plan. I don't know if they had a good plan. They certainly didn't execute a good plan. They didn't act like a team that had a good plan. And maybe I was influenced by the commentator on the TV broadcast, but it certainly seemed like Pitt needed to get out of its offense and just let Jalen Lowe, Ishmael Leggett, Damian Dunn make plays, drive, and kick. Kick out to Zach Austin. Kick out to Guillermo Diaz-Graham. Kick out to Jorge Diaz-Graham, who played 5 minutes in the first half. Try and find those guys for opportunities to shoot threes. And here comes one of those points that I talked about yesterday on the Morning Pitt. In the first half yesterday, Pitt had 8 3-point attempts. And they came into the game averaging 24 attempts per game. But I think in the Louisville game, it was either Louisville or Duke, they only attempted 6 in the first half. And then this game last night, they only attempted 8. Big change in this game. In the second half, they attempted 13 and made 7 of them. That's who this team is. This team, when they are at their best, Lowe and Leggett and Dunn are driving, and they're either finishing, drawing a foul, or kicking out to a 3-point shooter. And in the first half, that wasn't happening. Only 8 attempts in the first half. And those 8 attempts, it was 2 for Leggett, 2 for Zach Austin, 1 for each of the Diaz-Graham twins, 1 for Damian Dunn, and 1 for Lowe. So you weren't even really kicking out to your shooters when Austin and the Diaz-Graham twins have 4 attempts in the first half. Those are the guys who are going to make threes for you. And you're not driving and kicking to them. This is what the offense needs to be. This is what the offense, when the offense is at its best, that's what it's doing. Those 3 guards driving and either, again, finishing, drawing a foul, or kicking out to a shooter. But they weren't doing it in the first half. I don't know what they were trying to do, but it wasn't that. And when there were double teams coming on Jalen Lowe, do the math, folks. It's 5-on-5. If you double team somebody, what does that mean? I say it to the 5th graders and 6th graders all the time. Somebody's open. You've got to take advantage of it. You've got to make teams pay. If another team, if Clemson or Syracuse or any of these, North Carolina, any of these teams coming up that they play, look at that film and say, oh, here's what we need to do. We need to double Jalen Lowe. Well, you better have a plan for that. You better have a plan on how you're going to adjust to that and how you're going to adapt to it and how you're going to make them pay. And Pitt never did that against Florida State last night. Never. In the second half, what they did was they were able to get more drives. They were able to get more plays. They let Lowe and Leggett attempted 7 shots in the second half. He only made 2 and didn't go to the free throw line, which is a little bit surprising. And we could talk about that. Maybe the fouls that Ishmael Leggett did not get, although he did have a team-high 5 rebounds in the second half. But Lowe and Leggett were driving. Lowe and Leggett were trying to create, which is what those guys do best. And it was successful. I mean, Lowe was able to score. And again, hand out 4 assists. Jorge Diaz-Graham knocking down threes from outside. I think every shot he made from outside was an assisted basket. This is what they do well, but for some reason they chose not to pursue that in the first half. Damian Dunn was a net negative for this team last night. Damian Dunn went 0 of 8 from the floor, and this was after we had some, extended discussions and agreements on the message boards in the last few days about how much of a positive addition Damian Dunn has been. Well, he wasn't last night. He wasn't scoring. He turned the ball over twice. He didn't make a basket. He shot 2 free throws, and those were his only 2 points. He had 1 rebound, 1 assist, and 2 turnovers. He had 2 steals, and that was probably the most positive thing he did while playing 31 minutes. Jeff Capel needs to, you don't want to abandon players. You don't want to walk away from guys, but if somebody's not playing well, if somebody's not producing, somebody's not performing for you, you need to make those adjustments. And we saw it in the second half. In the second half, they spent a whole lot of time. Let me see when Jorge Diaz-Graham came in. Jorge Diaz-Graham came in at the 13-19 mark. And I think he played the entire rest of the half because that adjustment was needed. Papa Conti got some decent minutes. Got 7 minutes in the second half. What did he get? 2 minutes in the first half. This is... I think Jeff Capel needs to take a really long look at the personnel. Like Jorge Diaz-Graham has shown that he can be a useful player. Papa Conti has shown that he can be a very useful player. And as the Cam Corrin situation and Cam Corrin and Guillermo Diaz-Graham right now are not doing a whole lot to help this team win. I don't think, did Corrin even score last night? Where's my box score? No, he had 2 points on free throws. Only 4 field goal attempts for Cam Corrin. So he had 9 rebounds, but he didn't score. Like, you're not going to win much if a guy playing as many minutes as he does, and Corrin was out there for 26 minutes, if he doesn't score. Guillermo, 2 points on 1 basket. Like, those are your 2 main post players. And, the guys that typically get the most of your minutes. Now, last night, Corrin played 26 and Guillermo played 8. But to have those guys put up 4 points on 1 made basket combined, I mean, this is reminiscent of the game on Saturday against Louisville in the second half where Corrin doesn't get any rebounds. You are getting too many extreme negative outcomes from those players right now. And I think you need to look at Papa Conti for more than 10 minutes, which is what he played last night. You need to look at Jorge Diaz-Graham for more than 18, which is what he played last night. And am I being reactive to the one game last night? Yeah, to a certain extent, although it's not just one game. We've seen Papa Amadou Conti make positive contributions on, I would say, the majority of his appearances this season. And we've also seen Cam Corrin be remarkably inconsistent and unreliable in doing some of the things that he's been tasked with doing. Guillermo Diaz-Graham continues to be an enigma. I think he probably, we saw the change starting lineup last night with Lowe, Leggett, Dunn, Austin, and Corrin starting, and Guillermo coming off the bench. That's fine with me. That's fine with me. My main concern with that was, where's your depth at the 4 going to come from? But now that's answered. It's Jorge, and it could be a mix of Jorge and Guillermo, but it's Jorge. Jorge is your depth at the 4 going forward, until he shows that he's, it becomes a liability again. And then Papa Amadou Conti has to be part of the depth at center. I think Jeff Capel has to be willing to do some of these things. And I think he showed some of it last night. He went to his depth early. He used 9 guys in the first half, although there was some foul trouble that probably inspired some of that. But he did go to his depth. He went to the bench. He used 9 players in the first half. He used 9 players in the game. And he was willing to stick with Jorge and Papa Conti when those players were playing better, particularly Jorge, who obviously had a whole lot to do with Pitt's comeback, where the Panthers were down 16. They ultimately, at one point cut the lead down to 5. And a big part of that was Jorge draining threes out there. He had a huge game. 17 points, 4 of 5 from 3-point range, 5 of 7 overall in the game. Jorge has earned more minutes, and he continues to earn more minutes, and those minutes will come at the expense likely of his brother. But that's okay because Jorge has earned those minutes. Guillermo can play more at center. Where does this team go? What happens next for this team with a huge game against Clemson on Saturday, 3-game losing streak, looking like a pretty tough game they're going to have to play? I don't know. They're in a tough spot right now. They're in a tough spot right now because they need to be able to rely on their guards, but they've had some pretty inconsistent games from the guards over the last 3 games, whether it's Lowe and Leggett or one of the 2. Damian Dunn, I thought, was pretty positive in his reinsertion to the lineup of the 2 games prior to last night, but last night it was not his finest moment, and I don't think he really helped move the offense all that well. You need those guards to figure it out. You need those guards to play at a higher level. Rebounding continues to be an issue, and if the guards aren't playing well and making baskets and drawing fouls and kicking out for threes, then you're going to be in a lot of trouble. I think what they did in the second half last night, the way they played, the way they attacked, the types of shots they looked for, just generally the style and the approach with low driving and kicking. That's what it needs to be. That's what this team is. That's how they're built. That's what they do well. And that's what it needs to be going forward. But if they continue to insist on trying to do other things, the outcomes are probably going to be the same. That's a tough loss. I thought last night would be the bounce back game. And even when it looked like... so they were down 16 when it looked like they might have a chance to really come back. And it did. I mean, even down to the final 2 minutes, they were down 7 with 2 minutes to go. But each time, So they cut it to 6 actually with 2.5 minutes on another Jorge 3. They end up committing a foul, but Florida State only makes one free throw. Jalen Lowe makes a couple free throws. Florida State only makes one. And it's 70-64 with a minute and a half to go. You're down 6 with a minute 30. That's not bad, except they come up the court and Lowe just fires a 3 right off the bat. It's a bad decision. Down at the other end, Florida State shoots free throws. They make both. It's an 8-point game with a minute 15. Come up the court. Leggett just fires a 3. Both, bad shots, not good decisions from two guys who are expected to be the leaders of this team, the guys who carry this team. They haven't been doing it. They haven't been doing a good job of it in the last 3 games. And they're certainly not the only issue. They might not even be the biggest issue. Maybe rebounding. But those guys are going to have to get better. You can't wait around for them to get better anymore. And it's not like there are, substitutes or alternatives. It's not like there's other guys you're going to play in place of them. But they're not doing. I know it's weird to say after Lowe had 22 points, but he only scored 2 in the first half. And that dug a big part of the hole. Not the entire hole, but that dug a big part of the hole. You've got to get better play. You can't have 4 turnovers and 2 points in the first half if you're Jalen Lowe. Higher level plays expected and needed. And in Game 17, it should be there. So Pitt drops to 12-5 overall, 3-3 in the ACC. I don't know. It feels like this team is. I don't want to say they're facing a crossroads because they have such a tough game coming up on Saturday, but they're facing the kind of crossroads where they have to figure out who they are, what they do, what they want to do, what they can do, and who's going to do it. Because it feels like they don't have a lot of answers for any of those questions right now. I'll have answers for your questions tomorrow, though, because it's the mailbag edition of the Morning Pit here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Go to the Panther-Lair.com message boards, the Between Fifth and Forbes message board. We've got a thread there started where you can post your questions. I think there were some questions left over from last week, so we'll get as many of those as we can. And then we'll also add in any new questions we have from this week. So post your questions there. We'll answer as many as we can in tomorrow's mailbag. I always look forward to doing those, and I appreciate your participation in it. All right, thanks for tuning in today. Tough loss last night, but that's how it goes. Now it's, again, for the 3rd game in a row, what's the bounce back look like? We'll find out on Saturday. In the meantime, make sure you like this video and subscribe to youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com so you never miss any of our Pitt video content. Check out the website, Panther-Lair.com, for all the coverage and conversation from and about Pitt's game at Florida State. And we'll get all the preview content to get you ready for Pitt Clemson, on Saturday. So like and subscribe, check out the website, and we will catch up with you tomorrow for the Morning Pit right here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com.